I was wronged at my workplace when my colleague accused me of stealing his ideas, and I was forced to defend myself in a humiliating situation. That day was supposed to be just another regular workday, but it turned into one of the most difficult moments of my career. The story began weeks earlier, when I was assigned, together with this colleague, to work on a major project for the company. It was a strategic project, one that required creativity, attention to detail, and the ability to think differently. From the very beginning, I took it extremely seriously. I stayed late almost every night, researching, drafting, and creating detailed notes and sketches. Some nights I didn't leave the office until after midnight. I believed that hard work never goes unnoticed, and I was confident that my manager would eventually see the effort I was putting in. But what I didn't expect was that someone who was supposed to be my teammate would turn against me in the worst way possible. At first, he seemed genuinely interested in our brainstorming sessions. I shared parts of my notes with him, explained my vision for how we could present the project, and even showed him my diagrams and mental maps. I thought we were working together like a team. He nodded, smiled, and acted as if he appreciated my effort. Little did I know, that smile was hiding a different intention. Then came the big day, the project meeting with our manager. I walked into the conference room with a folder full of organized notes and plans, ready to present everything I had worked on. I was nervous but confident. I sat down, glanced at my papers, and took a deep breath. But before I even had the chance to speak, my colleague stood up. With absolute confidence, he started presenting his ideas. Word for word, detail for detail, he spoke exactly what I had been working on for weeks. Even the examples I had carefully chosen, he used them too. At first, I thought maybe he was just introducing the project and would give me credit later. I tried to stay calm and listened. But as the minutes passed, it became painfully clear. He was taking credit for everything, and then he went further. He looked straight at the manager and said, "But I've noticed some of my ideas being leaked. I think someone is trying to claim them as their own." With a slight gesture, he turned his eyes toward me. For a moment, the entire room fell, silent. Everyone's eyes were suddenly on me. I felt my stomach twist, my face burning. Some colleagues looked shocked, others seemed unsure. And my manager? He leaned back, arms crossed, studying me carefully. I tried to gather myself, my voice trembling slightly as I said, "That's not true. These ideas are the result of my hard work, and I can prove it." But my colleague only smirked and replied, "If you can prove it, do it now. As for me, I've already sent drafts of these ideas to my email weeks ago. I can show the timestamps anytime." The whispers started immediately. People exchanged glances, some nodding, some frowning. I could feel the weight of doubt pressing against me. I hadn't prepared for this kind of betrayal. I never thought I'd be put in a position where I'd have to defend my integrity, my name, and weeks of hard work in front of everyone. That day, I realized that sometimes the truth isn't enough by itself. The silence in the room grew heavier after my colleague's words. My manager's eyes shifted between the two of us, his expression unreadable. I could almost hear the unspoken question, "Who's telling the truth?" My heart was racing, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. I knew that if I showed weakness now, the accusations would stick. I opened my folder and placed my notes on the table, the ones I had spent countless nights preparing. I said as calmly as I could, "I have everything documented, every idea, every draft. These are my original notes, handwritten and dated." I pushed the papers toward the manager, but before he could even reach for them, my colleague interrupted. He leaned forward and said mockingly, "Anyone can write notes after the fact. What matters is who had the foresight first. And I can prove my emails are dated weeks ago." The tension in the room rose sharply. Some of my teammates shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. I could tell they didn't know what to believe. For a moment, I wondered if any of them suspected me, if they thought I was capable of stealing someone else's work. That thought alone made me sick. I gathered my courage and looked directly at the manager. "With all respect, sir," I said firmly, "I don't appreciate being accused of dishonesty. My work speaks for itself. I've spent hours refining these ideas, and I can explain every single step I took to get here. I can even show the drafts on my computer, saved progressively over time." The manager tapped his fingers on the table, deep in thought. Then he finally spoke. "Enough. Both of you will bring me your proof. If one of you is lying, it will be clear soon enough." My colleague crossed his arms with a confident smirk, as if the outcome was already in his favor. I, on the other hand, felt a strange mix of anger and determination. I wasn't going to let weeks of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and hard work be stolen from me. But as the meeting went on, I noticed something unsettling. A few colleagues avoided making eye contact with me, while others whispered quietly among themselves. Was my reputation already being damaged? Were people starting to believe his story? I clenched my fists under the table, trying to steady myself. My colleague had played his move cleverly, twisting the narrative before I even had the chance to present. And now I was stuck in a position where I had to fight not only for credit, but for my credibility. I knew this battle wasn't going to be resolved in one meeting. It was just the beginning of something bigger, something that could either make or break me at this company. After the meeting ended, I walked back to my desk with a storm of thoughts in my head. My colleague had managed to cast doubt on my integrity in front of everyone, and even though the manager hadn't made a decision yet, I could feel the shift in the office atmosphere. Some coworkers avoided me altogether, pretending to be busy, when I passed by. Others gave me quick, curious glances, as if silently asking themselves whether I was the kind of person who would really steal someone's work. That silent judgment was crushing. I sat down, opened my laptop, and stared at the folders that contained all my drafts, notes, and versions of the project. Each file was a piece of evidence, a small fragment of the endless hours I had poured into the project. But I knew it wasn't enough to simply have the files. I had to present them in a way that left no room for doubt. For the rest of the day, I worked quietly, compiling everything. Early sketches scanned from my notebook, draft versions saved, with timestamps. Email drafts I had written to myself as reminders, even voice memos I had recorded late at night when inspiration struck. The more I gathered, the stronger my case became. But deep inside, there was still fear. What if my manager preferred to side with my colleague simply because he was more confident, louder, and better at twisting words? What if my reputation was already stained beyond repair, no matter what evidence I showed? That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the scene from the meeting in my head, his smirk, the accusing tone, the whispers of my coworkers. It was as if the walls of the office had turned against me. I couldn't allow myself to fall apart. I needed to fight. Back the next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The building was still quiet, only a few lights on. I took advantage of the silence to rehearse how I would present my defense. I imagined the manager sitting in front of me, questioning me, doubting me. I repeated my words out loud, trying to sound calm and confident, even though my stomach was in knots. As the hours passed and more people arrived, the tension in the air became impossible to ignore. My colleague walked into the office with a smug grin, greeting people cheerfully as if nothing had happened. He even stopped by my desk, leaned in slightly, and whispered, "You can try all you want, but no one's going to believe you." I froze. His words were like poison. For a moment, anger boiled inside me. I wanted to shout, to expose him right there. But I swallowed my pride and said nothing. If I reacted emotionally, I'd only make myself look worse. Later that day, the manager called me into his office. The door closed behind me and I found myself sitting across from him, my laptop open and my evidence prepared. His face was serious, his eyes sharp as he said, "I've given both of you the chance to prove your claims. Show me what you have." I took a deep breath, clicked on the first file, and began walking him through my process. I explained how the ideas had developed step by step, showing him the progression of drafts, the notes with dates, the emails I had written weeks before. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding with every word. The manager listened carefully, occasionally nodding, occasionally raising an eyebrow. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Was he convinced? Or was he simply being polite before delivering his verdict? When I finished, I closed the laptop and sat in silence. The room felt colder, heavier. The manager leaned back in his chair, tapped his pen against the desk, and said quietly, "I will review everything thoroughly, but understand this, you're both under scrutiny now. The truth will come out." I left his office with mixed feelings. Relief that I had spoken, but dread about what would happen next. And as I walked past my colleagues, I noticed their eyes again, filled with suspicion, curiosity, and maybe even pity. The battle was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The following week felt like an eternity. Every day at work was filled with tension. My colleague walked around as if he had already won, while I kept my head down, waiting for the manager's decision. Finally, the day arrived. We were both called into the manager's office. The atmosphere was heavy. I could feel my pulse in my ears. My colleague sat across from me, still wearing that arrogant smile. The manager cleared his throat and looked at both of us. His expression was serious, almost unreadable. Then he placed a folder on the table. "I've reviewed everything. The evidence is clear." He turned to my colleague first. "Your emails were indeed sent weeks ago, but after examining them carefully, I noticed something odd. The formatting, the timestamps, even the phrasing, all matched drafts that were created later, not earlier. In other words, you manipulated your files." My colleague's smile froze. His face turned pale, and for the first time, he looked nervous. Then the manager looked at me. "Your notes, drafts, and records show a consistent timeline of work. The progression of your ideas is authentic and verifiable. It's obvious you are the true author of the project." A wave of relief washed over me, though my hands were still trembling. I had fought so hard to defend myself, and finally, the truth was out. The manager's tone hardened as he faced my colleague. Accusing someone falsely, trying to sabotage their reputation, and attempting to steal their work is unacceptable in this company. You've crossed a line. The room fell silent. My colleague lowered his head, unable to speak. His arrogance had vanished completely. As I left the office that day, I felt exhausted but victorious. My reputation had been restored, and more importantly, I had proven to myself that standing up for the truth is always worth it, even when the odds are against you. It wasn't just about the project anymore. It was about integrity, resilience, and learning that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought in silence, with patience and proof. And that was the day I realized, no matter how many people try to take what's yours, the truth will always find its way to the surface. And so, our story comes to an end today. But in the world of Max Fables, every tale carries a lesson and leaves an impact. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you won't miss our upcoming tales. Here, where stories come to life.